Hi, this is Tom Werman, retired record producer, and we go to 11.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
So, Tom, thanks so much on a Memorial Day, even. So, I know you're a busy dude. You're doing like a bed and breakfast, right? I think that's what you're doing these days.
Oh no.
No,
No, I am in full blissful
full
retirement.
retirement. So, when did
Uh,
the bed and breakfast thing end? Because you were doing that for a little bit.
20 years.
Hmm.
Uh, I made records for 23 years, and then I left and did the luxury bed and breakfast thing for 20 years. And that was about 4 years ago. We
Okay.
sold, moved up the road, renovated for 2 years, and
Nice.
live in a house that I just love. And I finished the book, and then I do whatever I want. I spend a lot of time working outside.
Nice.
I don't feel guilty if I take a nap or sit down. The Berkshires are beautiful, just beautiful, and it's just the best. I can't. I could show you the view. It's okay.
Yeah, right.
I'm very happy being retired. I'm pretty old, and it was time. I mean, I don't think I don't. People tell me I don't look 80, but I'm 80, and it's okay to be old now. It's people are forgiving, and there are a few benefits, discounts at the
Oh,
movies.
there you go.
That's it.
Nice. So,
And,
you're
and,
de
and we go to 11 thing, you know, I took my family to see Spinal Tap
right.
in LA, had to be 30, 40 years ago.
Hmm.
And I remember that I was probably the only one in the entire theater who was not laughing because
Yeah,
I said, "Oh my God, these guys are totally unaware of what's happening to them.
right.
They're on the way out." And I worked with bands that were somewhat like that.
Yeah. And there's a lot of great stuff in Turn It Up, the book, which isn't the typical, it's not a biography. I mean, it's almost like you telling some tales of, some of the throughout the years, of all the bands you work with. I think the most shocking to me was you actually got a sawed-off shotgun pulled on you.
Yes,
Wow.
yes, to my head, the side of my
Hmm.
head. Yeah,
Right.
it was over in a flash. Um, Things moved so quickly that I didn't have a chance to freak out.
Right.
He said, "You and me are taking a walk." I remember that.
Jeez.
And that was a bad moment. Then we straightened things out because we knew who the guy he was after was.
Mhm.
And I actually called him after this gunman left.
Huh.
And it was about 12:30 or 1 in the morning. And I think I yelled at him and woke him up.
Right.
And I can't remember even what his name was now, but he apparently owed this drug dealer some money.
Hmm. Yeah. As far as with the book, though, I mean, can you explain how would you describe the book
Um,
to someone that hasn't
well,
read it?
in the beginning, I wanted to title it "A Slave to the Melody,"
Mm,
which was to mean it was meant to mean that I had no choice um, but to go into music. But I had to be in music. I had to spend my life with rock and roll music because it
right.
became the paramount thing in my life. And my parents wanted me to do something else. So it it was meant to say I started this way. I was very unhappy. I went into rock and roll music. You should do what you want, not what they say you should do. And I don't want to repeat the "oh, follow your dreams" thing, but basically I told my kids to do what they like doing best, and they would hopefully become really good at it, and the money would follow.
Right.
don't go for the money. I
Yeah.
went for the money at the beginning.
Right.
And then I wanted to memorialize as best I could classic rock because well, at least for our generation, I mean, look what's happening today. You
Hmm.
hear when you walk into the supermarket, you hear songs that are 50 years old.
Yeah.
And most young people, if not, our children, if not our grandchildren, are familiar with a lot of the great songs from the 70s and 80s.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
And so I figured there was a lot of interest in this period, this musical period. And since I was a contributor to it, and I love to reminisce. I wrote the book, and I didn't sit down to write it. I just thought of things. Occasionally, I'd have a memory, and I'd run and
Mm.
jot it down. And I never spent more than 15 or 20 minutes writing the book. And it was over 3 years that I did it. And it was great. And I think it was a surprise to a lot of people who figured that anybody who produced a Motley Crue album or Twisted Sister album couldn't complete a whole sentence,
Right.
you know. Uh, but people seem to love the book. And I still get really positive feedback and emails, and
Right.
it's nice. And it's also like the final word from me. That's it. I'm
Right.
now, I'm retired. I'm not going to do anything else. I loved my life, what I did for work. And
Yeah.
you need to enjoy that. If you didn't like what you did in your life up to the point of retirement, it's too late.
Right.
So try to enjoy what you're doing now.
Yeah.
If you like it, it's even better.
Right.
So
Yeah, and
I'm
I
ha-
need to
happy to
also
say.
point out you did the audiobook in your voice, so it's you doing it. So
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. I got a chance to kind of scan through it as I was doing chores over the last week and stuff. So it's pretty cool to have that as something to reference back to as well.
it was nice. It was fun doing it. When I listened back, I was concerned that I spoke too slowly.
Yeah.
Uh, but I do understand, although I'm a tech idiot, I do understand that you can increase the speed
Hmm.
of the conversation or the
Right.
reading
On the app.
without going into Mickey Mouse land or,
Yep. Yep.
well, uh,
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
it's,
I know you talking about retirement. Was there a near miss? Like somebody, I know it's probably not one of those things that you have many regrets, if any at all, but
yeah,
was
yeah.
there somebody that you're like, damn it, I wish I could have gotten that person, or it was really close for you to land a particular gig producing either a song or an album for somebody?
Well, that would probably be many of the bands that I loved and would have loved being in the studio with didn't they were so good that they didn't need a producer,
Mm,
like the Eagles
right.
or the Who or the Stones or the Beatles. Anyway, um, I didn't really have any regrets. I did have regrets for as the book says, the ones that got away.
Right.
Rush, Leonard Skinner, and Kiss. But and then later, very much later, Whitney Houston. So I offered these to my labels, and they passed on all of them. The only one I think I could have really helped was Skinner.
Ah,
Um,
yeah.
that was more in my wheelhouse. And then a couple of years later, I signed Molly Hatchet,
Hmm.
and that worked out well.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
were. I used to call them the poor man's Leonard Skinner, which was a little rude of me, but
Sure.
but they were derivative, you
Sure.
know. But but I love that. Anyway,
Yeah, that there was some good stuff there too. I mean, they were. I don't know if you'd even call them like second tier Southern rock, right? Because I mean, they were pretty good.
they were pretty good, especially Dwayne Roland,
Hmm.
best probably the best guitar player I ever worked with, except for Jeff Beck.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So I was going to throw a few albums at you because, sometimes these albums are overlooked and they are, 80s rock underground classics, if not classics. I mean, the one that always stands out to me is the Stryper Against the Law record.
I saw
Uh,
them a couple of weeks ago.
yeah.
I
And,
mean,
and, oh,
I
yeah. So
visited them
I
in
remember, I remember seeing some photo online, I think that Michael Sweet posted.
oh, how nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
But Against the Law, again, they took a different direction there, but I thought it worked. I mean, tell me about that going into that record. Was it always the idea of maybe, I don't know, making them even more polished slightly? I mean, just to kind of get a little bit more of a pop and pull them out of that Christian rock
Well, they
genre?
pulled themselves out. They pulled themselves
Mm.
out of the Christian rock thing. They said we would like to make a secular
Uh-huh.
album, rock and roll
Sure.
record.
Sure.
I it's so long ago.
Right.
I really, and I told them I didn't remember, too much of
Hmm.
the album itself. And they've made like 11 albums since then.
Sure.
They're extremely busy. Um, yeah, I was surprised to get a phone call from them
Hmm.
because I mean, here I am, a nice Jewish boy
Right.
who who's like they call me,
Sure.
and I said, "Well, why are you calling me?" And they said, "No, we would like to make a record that's not particularly, Christian."
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
and I have to say they were among the few nicest groups I ever worked with.
That
Really good time.
ple ple
Really good.
pleasant experience then, huh?
Yeah. What it was an experience.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And they're still basically three of them are still together.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting thing having a meeting. Our first meeting with them was at their house in Orange County,
Mhm.
very conservative area south of LA. And it was at their mother's house. She was managing them at the time. And it just happened to work out. It was at the beginning of the end
Mhm.
of my producing career. I think it was 89, 90, maybe just after Poison.
Right.
And there were another 10 years of bands that weren't giant,
Right.
that people came to me with, like Lita Ford and Stryper and maybe I don't know if LA Guns and Kicks were in there. Maybe they were in the late 80s, but
Hmm.
and then some newer bands that didn't happen. And then I said, I think I'm finished.
Mm, right.
That-
I, let's say it like because the Against the Law record was 1990. Right
was
around then,
that's
I
right.
think is when we started because I'm in the Northwest, so I think the grunge bands were big even prior leading up to that. I mean, they were hitting the clubs, saw Alice in Chains when they were still somewhat of a
Yeah.
glam band, saw Mother Love Bone, who eventually some of the members evolved to Pearl Jam and stuff like that, and then Soundgarden. Uh,
Yeah.
Pearl Jam, Nirvana recorded a live record in Portland at the Pine Street Theater. So I mean, for us, we weren't Seattle, but we saw enough of them because they were just up I-5 pretty
Yeah.
much. So they gigged around.
I can't remember who I worked with. It may have been the Circle Jerks
Ah, uh-huh.
in Pearl Jam studio in Seattle.
Okay.
Uh, um,
Was
it
that
was fun
yeah,
being in Seattle, and it was early, but it was post Pearl Jam, I guess. So
yeah.
that's I remember when very well when Nirvana came out with the album "It Smells Like Teen Spirit," and I knew the writing was on the wall
Yeah.
because there was no way I really could make an easy transition. I could have, but the record companies didn't feel that.
Mm.
it was appropriate for me to make a transition from corporate
Hmm.
metal, to new wave or punk
Right.
or alternate,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
you call it. So, that kind of told me about the future,
Sure.
and I tried to reinvent myself, as you may have read in the book, and it
Yeah.
was a very frustrating until I read that one book,
Hmm.
Who Moved My Cheese,
Yeah.
and that just changed my life. It really did. I mean, I jumped to my feet basically and said, "God, let's get out of here and do something else."
Hmm. Yeah.
It was
Well, there you
right.
go. You answered my question. You read my mind. That's where I was going to, is that, the transition to how would that have happened with yourself producing grunge bands, or,
Yeah.
bands that were kind of grittier like that and stuff. But the one thing I do want to add is you did produce an album for a band that was kind of in the in between. And in fact, I chatted with
Okay.
Jizzy Pearl, and I go, "Hey, Jizzy, you guys kind of slotted in right between like
Yeah,
Soundgarden and like GNR." And he goes, "Yeah, that's a good observation." So
it's
tell me about
true.
that one,
I
Blackout in the Red Room.
Yeah, it was great. Um, I don't understand why. Why do you think they call it dope? Wasn't huge.
Uh-huh.
That song itself, great. They were an explosive band,
Hmm.
and really good. And I almost had signed them to my production company,
Right.
Julia's Music. But I was going to take them to Columbia Records, and Columbia actually stole them right out from under me
Yeah.
and signed them directly, and then spent a ridiculous amount of money on tour support. So the promotion budget wasn't really there.
Mm.
So they had me produce the record, but they had the band.
Right.
I don't know if things would have turned out differently, but they were a very interesting band, and you're right, they were pretty aggressive
Hmm.
musically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were kind of almost like Jane's Addiction too. You know what I mean? Like they slotted in somewhere in there in between the GNR and the Seattle sound, right? I mean,
Yeah.
although, Jane's Addiction, you're probably aware, I mean, they
I'm
were they were
aware.
around before that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that. A lot of bands that are well known to people who were music lovers from that era, I missed.
Hmm.
Um, I'm very provincial when it comes to what I still listen to. But I missed them because I was in the studio basically,
Hmm.
24/7. And you don't want to listen to music after you've been listening to music for 12 hours.
Right.
So I would go home and go to bed or watch TV or whatever, but I wasn't very adventurous
Mm.
in finding new music, nor have I been since then. I have a 4-hour playlist on my phone, and I take it to the gym, and the songs are from the 70s and 80s, some from the 60s, a
Right.
few from the 90s.
Uh-huh.
I go up to about well, um, it's completely, it's out of my mind right now.
Right.
Another problem with getting old is the memory thing. We joke about it when we're young, but when you're there, it's a
Yeah.
piss.
Right.
It's really difficult. Um, but who did? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, that's about it. I haven't
Hmm.
listened to new music. People will recommend certain people. I have a friend who just played Lyle Lovett
Oh,
for me, and it was really surprising.
right.
The guy sounds not like he looks.
Hmm.
He's and he has a lot of different styles. He's quite good, but I missed a lot of
Sure.
acts, and I'm stuck uh, in my little period there. I started in 54 and I stopped probably in the early 90s or mid 90s. That's to me, that's
Hmm.
the era of classic rock.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you were right there.
It was a very fortunate timing thing.
Sure.
The time I was born, growing up, the whole country,
Hmm.
which is not the country now that I grew up in. You know, we probably shouldn't go there.
Right.
Uh, but but it was a wonderful thing because I was 9 years old when I first heard Elvis and
Mm.
when Elvis came upon the scene. It was perfect. Perfect timing in college and playing in a band when the Beatles.
Right.
I saw the Beatles at Carnegie Hall. I saw the Stones all in New York. I mean, I was right there. If I had been at a country school, you know, like maybe Oberlin or somewhere else, not Columbia,
Hmm.
I wouldn't have been exposed to all that.
Right.
So it was great. I was a lucky guy, very,
Right. Well,
very lucky.
and then there's also all the memories associated to that. I mean, even in just chatting about some of the a couple of these records so far, the Stryper Against the Law, I go back to, oh, when was the first time I heard that? And I remember watching the video. It wasn't on MTV, it was on Much Music, which is the Canadian
Oh yes. Oh yes.
MTV, and then
Right.
Love Hate. I remember watching that on the Headbangers Ball and going, "Who the hell is this?" And then listening to them on Z Rock, which was that syndicated uh, station from Texas that played old hard rock and metal, and
Uh-huh.
things like that. I mean, and then
Probably.
just whatever was going on in life, right? I mean, all those memories are associated with all the tunes.
Yeah. That's another one. When you asked me who I might have liked to produce, ZZ Top would be
Oh yeah,
right up there. They didn't need a producer either. I
right,
mean, look at I mean, it's said on their albums that Bill Ham was
right,
their producer. He was their manager.
sure.
And I'm sure he had a lot to do with the records, but it's Billy Gibbons,
Oh yeah,
you know,
yeah,
who did all that. And I don't think I could outsmart him in the studio.
yeah,
I mean, look at LaGrange. Look at their hits. I mean, they're
yeah,
so good.
yeah. Out of curiosity there, Tom, as far as with like musicians, there's always kind of like that brotherhood type thing. Like, you have like Eddie Van Halen would, hang out with Lukather and all these various other guitarists and whatnot. With producers, is it the same thing or nah?
It's not really, you know, unfriendly
Hmm.
or asocial. And there are a couple of guys I knew and worked alongside of in the same studio. They'd be in a different room. Um, Guys like Andy Johns,
Hmm.
Mike Klink, they were these were record plant guys. Um, I met most of them. Roy Thomas
Oh yeah.
Baker was really a gas. Um, and a lot of others. I had two role models, and one was Glyn Johns, who did, I mean, he did the Eagles' first album,
Right.
and he also did Live at Leeds, I
Hmm.
think, or he did Who's Next.
Who's next?
Can you do? I mean, can you
Yeah.
quite dissimilar
Right.
those two records, those two bands? Um, And I said, boy, this guy, he could do that and he could do that. He's really good. And then I started looking. That's um, when I actually realized what produced by meant.
Mm.
You'd turn the jacket over and read all the credits. And there was always a producer. And I had figured, well, maybe he's the guy who, like a movie, he gets the money together and pulls the personnel together and shepherds the project. But I didn't know.
Right.
So, and George Martin,
Oh,
uh,
okay.
he
Yeah.
was the other one. I mean, you can't deny his contributions
Sure.
and his masterful, approach. Um, and then there were some that, uh, did one or two albums or songs that I was really I mean really impressed by. I remember long time ago, early 80s, I think, I heard the Tubes, the Completion Backward Principle album.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't a huge album, but I was just literally blown away by that. And I was so impressed by it. And I liked it so much that I wrote, um, God damn it, what's his name? He's a great producer and a brilliant pianist. And this is bad.
Yeah, it
Bad.
happens.
The guy who produced that album. Maybe it'll come to me later.
Yeah.
Yeah, very bad. Um, and he never wrote back. But
Okay.
I wrote a letter, praising him and to the skies. And if people write me notes about, like, about my records,
Hmm.
I think it's rude not to, reply.
Sure. Sure.
You know. Uh, David something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyway,
on to the records though, because
yeah,
I have like a couple more that I wanted to
please.
pick your
Yeah.
brain about.
Are
You
you gonna?
mentioned the LA Guns, Cocked and Loaded, which again, they were coming off that gritty debut record, and then you step in and dial up the melody, and this wound up with the Ballad of Jane on there, which is their only charting hit, and it's a ballad no less.
Yeah. Um, I wasn't terribly involved in that album. It wasn't one of the things that I think the projects that I reflect on.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. The Ballad of Jane is like I have to admit that I realized quite early on, before I was a producer, that a hard rock band, the only way they were going to get on AM radio was to have a ballad.
Right.
And so I kind of became a power ballad specialist.
Right.
And that was that's what really worked for Motley and for Poison and for uh, many others. There were
Sure.
many others.
Right.
Uh, anyway, um,
With that one though, I mean, how involved were you in with the ballad? Did that take too many like several shots at it before you got the final product, or
with you mean with
the
any
Ballad of Jane specifically?
oh
Because that's
no,
no.
I think Dwayne and John,
Hmm.
my other guy, my
Sure.
engineer and studio buddy.
Hmm.
I let them have more to do with half the album. I took the other half.
Okay.
I did Rip and Tear,
Yeah. Oof.
which is is more
Yeah.
my speed. Um, I think we all contributed to the Ballad of Jane, but no, I, it wasn't my favorite, or it wasn't. They were more responsible for making it a hit,
Hmm.
if it, than I was.
Right.
So, yeah, that's it. I was going to ask if you have this list of in your mind of albums
Hmm.
that were not the big ones
Yeah.
that I did. I was going to ask if Mother's Finest or The Producers was in that list.
No, but we can
Oh,
talk about those. Why don't you throw those out there? Because
well,
the mother's finest one. Yeah. I mean,
they were Mother's Finest and The Producers, both from Atlanta. Um, Absolutely unfathomable for me
mhm.
to see them as not huge. They were perfect. They were fabulous, fabulous bands with great material, great performances, and you know what? they were the black rock and roll thing preceded Living
Right.
Color
Living
by
color.
a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah.
And and I mean, Mother's Finest incinerated the stage. They
Hmm.
were so and um, what's her name?
Oh,
Isn't this amazing that
yeah.
I
Well, I'm
remember
now it's contagious. Now
Joyce.
I'm driving.
It was Joyce.
Yeah, Joyce.
Yeah, and she was just fantastic. I loved them. I loved the producers, and I couldn't understand how you know there were two or three songs that they did. What's
Eh,
he got? What's he got? The single, the
yeah.
first on the first album,
Well,
Killer.
do
I don't.
what do you think it was though? I mean, do you think it was like not marketed right or what? That's
Well,
it, right?
with Mother's Finest,
Yeah. Yeah.
in a meeting in a one of our Epic Records meetings when I was still there, um, the head of promotion said, "Well, it kind of fell between the chairs. It's too white for black radio, and it's too black for white radio." So
Right.
that was their excuse.
Sure.
And I just thought they blew it. They didn't
Right.
they just didn't get it.
Right.
And with the producers, they were on Portrait, and
Yeah.
that was like one of the first two or three releases on a brand new subsidiary label,
Hmm.
um, run by a couple of new people, and it wasn't great.
Yeah.
So I do blame the label for those two. I
Hmm.
I, I really do. Um, but there were many other uh, unsuccessful albums that I made where I blame myself and not the label. So
Yeah.
that's it.
Uh, let's see. So we got Kicks. Kicks Blow My Fuse. Again, that was a
Yeah,
hit record. But also
really
again,
good.
the ballad. The ballad was the kind of like we talking about
Don't
LA
close your
Guns. Yeah,
eyes.
Don't Close Your Eyes, which was
Yeah,
really uncharacteristic for the band because they were really gritty, right? And
yeah,
the record's still pretty gritty. I think overall, top to bottom, that's a
it is.
great record.
It is. I like it too. And they're pretty AC/DC
Yeah,
influenced,
right.
obviously.
Sure.
But they were very good. Steve Whiteman, great,
Yeah,
great singer, you
sure.
know. Um, but there are individuals from bands that didn't happen that I worked with who are just brilliant, but for some reason maybe the rest of the band wasn't that good. But but there were I can think of 5 or 10 of the
Right.
52 records that I did
Sure.
these guys were on brilliant vocalists or brilliant guitar players, um,
Hmm.
whatever.
Yeah.
And
As far as vocal performances, I mean, how because Steve is a vocal coach, so I imagine even back then, I mean, the pipes were really powerful, right?
he's a vocal coach,
Yeah,
Steve Whiteman.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Like
really?
when he retired, I think he's doing that full time now. I think.
Good for him.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I feel bad. I really still do feel especially bad for Mother's Finest and the producers because
Hmm.
this is their life.
Right.
And they got me, adopted me temporarily to really to get them going,
Hmm.
and I didn't. I think the records are fine. I
Right.
don't think I did a bad job, but I feel that I could be held partially responsible
Right.
for their failure to become huge,
Yeah.
and I feel personally bad for that. Um, you're really responsible.
Yeah.
Although later down the road, you get no credit at all.
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
like like from Dee Snider
yeah,
from Nikki
I'll
Sixx.
ask you about that because that
Yeah.
bugs me. Let me. Well, we'll get to the next record because this one's a really. Uh,
Uh-oh.
I guess this might be one of their not best moments. I don't know what you think. I have the record. I like it. I enjoy it enough. But the Crocus Change of Address record.
Yeah, again, you're mentioning all these, all the records you're mentioning are the ones that I have very little recollection.
Okay.
Now the
That's
Crocus
the one
record,
with Schools Out in it. They always
yeah.
did covers. They threw Schools Out on that one.
Well, that was fun because I took my daughter's, I think it was my daughter's fifth grade class into the studio. And they're the ones who were doing,
The
oh,
background.
yeah,
Okay.
they're doing
Oh,
all the
nice.
kids' parts, and that was fun. Um, the Crocus thing illustrates the futility of doing something for the money
Mm,
instead of for love, um, because Crocus was already established,
right.
and I knew, well, there's a pretty good chance that we can sell 400,000 albums at least,
Hmm.
and there wasn't anything else on the schedule at the moment, so I said, yeah, let's do that. I don't think they were very happy with the record. I guess it did it all right.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm not, I don't remember how well or how poorly it did. Fernando he was a great guy. Mark Starace was a little difficult. He was from Malta,
Hmm.
and he was, he had a different approach. It's tough.
Yeah.
I think the most productive single album I did with any, when I only did one, was Blue Oyster Cult.
Oh, yeah.
That was it was I thought it was a really good album. It was fun. That didn't do very well either,
Hmm.
but it was a really positive experience for me,
Right.
and
Right.
spent laughing to the point of tears with Donald Roser, with
Oh,
Buck.
right.
You know,
Nice.
he's one of the funniest people I've ever met.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Blue Oyster Cult was the last band I saw prior to the shutdown with the pandemic. I think it was in February of 19, and then Portland, Oregon shut down, and that was like the last show I saw
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
the Roseland Theater. What a fucking great band. I mean,
Yeah.
even as they've, even over the years, the wear and tear, I mean, it just doesn't seem like it really impacted them a whole lot, although I think they're winding things down too
Their
now.
season. Well, they have to.
Yeah,
I mean, they don't have to, but you really should.
sure.
Uh, you should hang it up after a certain point if you're honest about how you're, affecting the crowd, how
Sure.
good you are. It
Right.
is kind of amusing to go to some um, concerts and see an audience that averages 60,
Hmm.
uh, 60 years old.
Right.
It's strange.
I don't
I
know. Go ahead.
I recently we went to the Sphere
Ah,
in Las
okay.
Vegas to see the Eagles.
Oh, nice.
It was almost life-changing. It was the most stunning and wonderful audiovisual event of my life.
Wow.
And I know every note of every song that they did anyway. But now Vince Gill is in the band,
Hmm.
and Deacon Fry, who's
Right.
Glenn's son, did
Yeah.
a really good job. And the Sphere itself was unreal.
Yeah.
Everyone should have that experience now. It's light years ahead of everything else. They
Nice.
have they have 140,000 speakers
Oh,
in
wow.
that building. Yeah,
Jeez.
must be this big. But the sound was ridiculous. The light. Anyway, uh,
Wow.
why did I say that? What were we talking
Oh, we
about?
were just talking about shutting things down. But, you
Oh,
bring up
yeah.
the Eagles. It seems like it was probably a couple years ago that I saw the Eagles in Portland, but it was probably more like four. But
So
like
good.
what you were saying, I mean the audience is aging. I mean, I saw it looked like it was just people in their 50s and 60s.
Yeah,
And you know what was amazing is these guys were buying like 60, $70 t-shirts by the doubles or triples. So I'm like,
merch,
my God. Yeah.
merch.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
were
well,
killing it.
look, that I mean, this is a superb band, disliked by many
Hmm.
for their perfection.
Right.
And I have a friend up here who used to be the music critic for a music editor for Rolling Stone.
Hmm.
And way back then, he wrote one review of one of the concerts he went to and accused them of loitering on stage because because they didn't have a routine and they didn't move
Right.
around. They did, and they stood at the Sphere. But I've seen them in concert before at the Garden, at Madison Square Garden, where they came out and sat on stools,
Oh
five
yeah.
stools.
Right.
But to hear them reproduce faithfully every note of their record is a great thing. Every other band you and I have ever seen probably is quite different from their record. And you say,
Yeah.
wait a minute, where are the backing vocals? Wait a minute, where's the that's not the solo he played. You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
they're they give you what you expect. And it's fantastic. Anyway,
Nice.
and some people don't like them. I don't get it.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that you mentioned, about some, at times some of the folks you've worked with being years later dissatisfied, which to me is a bummer because again, knowing what I know about the music that where I discovered some of those bands were through some of the records you worked with them on, right? And the tunes and and the videos, all that stuff, just the package. And then years later, there's, I don't, what do you think has happened? They become disgruntled. I don't get it. I mean, I guess I would take offense if it was like, wait a minute, we worked, we were successful, we delivered the goods, and now, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Yeah, but beyond that, we worked, we delivered the goods. You were very appreciative back then when
Yeah.
you were
Well,
selling
yes,
millions of records.
sure.
You know, backslap. As I said in the book, high fives, backslaps, dude, you're beautiful, babe. 20 years later, ego. I think a lot of it is ego.
Sure.
Um, you know, and people with Snyder, I'm quite sure it was. I don't want this guy to have any credit at all because I worked with this band. It was my band. It was 10 years. I fronted this band and we worked our asses off. And now all of a sudden we have this huge record. And because this guy comes along and he's already got 15 platinum records or gold record, whatever, and people are going to think that he did it when these are my songs, and then he made stuff up about what happened in the studio, how they had to beg me to do,
Right.
we're not going to take it, and stuff like that. And Nikki, same thing, Nikki Sixx, and probably who there were some others who were not thrilled. I'm not I wasn't the most compatible guy in the world, but I was far from a dictator.
Right.
People think producers have much more power than they actually do. We don't say you can do this song and we're not going to do that song. You can try to persuade them, but you don't have the authority. That's all about the label.
Right.
Anyway, I, I really don't get it.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, Donnie Purnell from Kix,
Oh,
he
yeah.
was another sourpuss, you know.
But I think with him though, I mean, I think he was well, he got ousted from the band eventually, but and has not
Oh, he's
been
done in
with them.
Kix
Yeah,
before?
yeah.
That
I
was his
think
deal.
after Hotwire, he was ousted or he left, and they moved on with him. Um, until they called it. But yeah, and I think the consensus was something similar because I've had conversations with the interviews with the guys from the band. Steve especially has been the one that's been kind of outspoken that he just he just didn't seem like he was very he didn't sound like he was very pleasant to work with. How's that?
Donnie?
Yeah,
Terrible.
yeah.
Yeah. Uh, uh, my, my engineer and I fairly quickly said we were talking, about how difficult he was,
Right.
uh, and we said his theme song seems to be "I wonder who's fucking me now."
Oh, yeah.
He was a very, it's like paranoid,
Ah,
you know, didn't smile much. I don't know.
right.
Look, I try to collaborate. And most of the people that are the nicest forever, the
Hmm.
people that you want to keep, that I want to keep in touch with, um, are the ones who didn't make it.
Ah,
You know, the some of the biggest ones. I mean, I was really friendly and tight with Mick Mars.
oh, uh-huh.
Vince was fine. Tommy was fine. Nikki was tough. And he was really tough on me in the Dirt and in
Oh, yeah.
the Heroin Diaries.
Hey, real quick, because I work with well, I guess I shouldn't say I work with addicts, like as in social work. But to me, it always struck me that for an addict, he had like such a great memory.
Nikki,
Yeah.
he just made it up.
Oh yeah, that's what I
Seriously.
was getting to. I was like,
Yeah.
it's just not
I
it's
mean, he made up
unusual for
stuff.
somebody to have in that condition as he was claiming to
Right.
be to
And what
have
do you
that kind of memory.
exactly? I have no idea how accurate everything else was, but what he said he remembered about me
Hmm.
and my behavior in the studio.
Right.
No. I mean, he actually said that he had to produce all of Vince's vocals.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right.
Complete fiction.
Right.
Complete.
Right.
It's like, why are you doing this? And he did call me about 10 years ago, to basically apologize for being such a, a dick.
Hmm.
And I'm pretty sure that was part of the 12-step program
Oh
that he
yeah.
did at the
Making
time.
the making amends. Yep.
Making amends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was nice of him to call. But really, these guys they're driven. You
Hmm.
know, Nikki was driven, Dee was driven, or is driven, and Donnie. They all want.
Well, they're like the alpha. They're like the alpha of
Yeah,
the band,
they
right?
are.
Yeah.
They are. Yeah, yeah. Um, anyway, Nikki did an amazing job with that band,
Yeah.
really. But we had, we had had a decent friendship, relationship, whatever. And then 20 years later, you just you didn't cut it. He
Right.
didn't get our sound. He wasn't paying attention. And now it's all behind me. Now I really don't care now.
Yeah.
Uh, and a little bit with Rick Nielsen too. We
Mm.
had, his memory is not exactly what mine
God,
was.
those were some great records too. Oh my God.
I
Yeah.
love,
Yeah.
love working with them.
And
As
Nugent.
I said in the book, I'll probably never talk to them again. Not
I
my doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, for me, I think it's the first four Cheap Trick, first four Nugent. You can't go wrong with those.
Yeah, I speak to Ted.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh yeah.
I try not to tell my friends here
Right.
because he's so politically
Oh yeah.
outspoken, and I don't agree with his politics at all.
Sure.
But we didn't talk politics. We made good
That's
records,
awesome.
and we had a good partnership. And he's a really decent guy,
Hmm.
really smart,
Right.
really articulate, really funny.
Yeah.
And there is so much to admire about him. And people say, "What?"
Yeah. Well,
That's why I wrote that
yeah,
chapter.
I've chatted with him a handful of times, and he always speaks highly of you and the records you guys made. So, I
That's
mean,
so
it's
nice,
awesome.
really. He
So,
is very nice to me, which is what you expect from
sure.
an artist with whom you had many hit records.
Right.
But it was a a rude education.
Right.
Uh,
Real,
to-
real,
to-
real quick though, Tom. Now, there was that one. You remember the Nikki Sixx impersonator, right? That Matthew Tripp guy. Now,
I
did that
I don't
guy?
remember
You
him. I
don't
just
remember?
remember reading about
Okay,
him.
so that guy was never in the studio cutting any bass tracks or anything, right?
This Nicky's bass playing has been the subject of so many ridiculous
Hmm.
stories, rumors. Nicky played all the bass on all the albums I did,
Hmm.
and I never heard of this guy until
Yeah,
I read it, in the press. Um, it was fine. And Nicky, I saw him the night he got out of the hospital.
yeah,
Uh, it was him. It was he.
yeah,
Pretty amazing guy
yeah.
to be declared dead and then check
Right.
yourself out a few hours later. I
No
don't know.
kidding. Well,
He
yeah.
lived. He,
Oh,
he
go ahead.
was. They were the real deal.
Okay.
That that band. It
You know
wasn't. Let's
the
pretend we're bad boys.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that was legit. I'm just actually surprised you didn't get a chance to work with Rat.
Well, we knew them. Especially who died.
Robin Crosby.
Robin,
Yeah.
a good guy, really
Hmm.
good guy. I guess he had roomed with Nicky
Yeah.
for a few years or
Sure.
something. They were great, but they were friends. They were good buddy bands.
Hmm.
Wouldn't have been right. Wouldn't have been a good thing for
Hmm.
them to work with me. They needed to do their own thing,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Uh, it was fun. That was fun.
Ah, How am I going to pose this one? So, Twisted D specifically. He recut "Stay Hungry" as "Still Hungry." Well, did you listen to that, and what was your thoughts? I bought it.
Didn't
Uh, le-
listen to it. I think it sold around 25,000
yeah, it
albums.
didn't sell well. Um,
I don't know.
Again, I bought it just for the bonus content, which had nothing to do with any like B-side. It was more like live content and
Yeah.
just stuff like that. Being a
Well,
fan, I bought it, but I wasn't a fan of it just simply because it wasn't the record that I've known and become familiar with, and the songs in the versions that I go back to my childhood with.
when I started making records, I quickly realized that uh, a lot of the bands I was working with at the time, it was all AM versus FM. AM played the hits, FM played the album cuts. And I realized right away that in order to get your band on AM radio and sell millions instead of hundreds of thousands on FM, you needed a hit. And most of the bands I worked with were too hard. Their music was too aggressive to be acceptable for AM radio. So I became a little bit of a polisher, a commercial. I'm a pop music lover, not a metal guy. I
Mhm.
never had any Iron Maiden records or Ozzy or any of
Right.
that. No. But the thanks that you get for changing the band a little and getting them on AM radio, making hit singles with them so they can sell millions of albums. They just later on down the road they say, oh well, it was too polished and it was commercial. If you
Right.
can't sing a song in the shower, it's probably not a hit. You know, that's what you want to do. You want to make songs that people can sing in the shower.
Right.
Uh, that's the deal.
Yeah.
They just, maybe they think it compromises their street credibility, to be commercial. And you look at Every Rose. It
Hmm.
has oohs and ahs, and it's got synth pads. I called it the kitchen sink approach,
Yeah.
which which is what you start with a voice and an acoustic guitar, you end with a voice and an acoustic, and in the middle you just throw
Yeah.
whatever
It's
you
got
can in
everything.
there to make it crescendo in the middle, and
Right.
then it goes like that.
And that solo on there has got to be one of the most memorable CC DeVille solos
It
ever.
was, it was a composite. It took 8 hours.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure it probably
That
did.
30-second solo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, but that was good. I mean, it's okay. Um, Look, uh, I'm very happy with almost everything I did,
Right.
in terms of production. And I just think, with Twisted Sister, with Motley Crue, probably with Kicks,
Hmm.
um, some others, I think they felt a little bit awkward or embarrassed about being more commercial than
Right.
hard rock and metallic and aggressive. You know, that's like, I don't know, we're supposed to be badass,
Right.
and we don't sound as badass as I want us to.
Right.
That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
So I get it. I get it.
Sure.
But if you have legitimate criticism, let's talk.
Sure.
But not what you're
Yeah. Yeah.
don't don't bullshit. Don't make lies
Right.
about.
Yeah.
So that's it. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I just got a couple more things and I'll cut you loose.
All right. Plenty of time.
Real quick, going back to the change of address record. There's an appearance from Alan Holdsworth on there. How?
Alan Holt.
Yeah, who reeled him in for
Oh,
that?
that
That's
wasn't that was that on Crocus?
Yeah, it was on Change of Address. He's on Long Way from Home,
Yes.
the closing tune on that record.
Right, right. Well, he was what they wanted. Um, I wasn't that familiar with him at the
Uh-huh.
time. And I heard I recently heard it again. He was a legend, I guess. He was, uh, the guitarist.
Yeah.
And I wasn't blown away by his
by
solo.
by that.
It was well executed.
Sure.
But it didn't move me.
Sure. There you go.
That was
Um,
it.
just a couple more things, and then I'll cut you loose because you've been
Yeah,
awesome. Thanks so much for doing this.
sure. It's
Um,
fun. It's fun.
I know you had a lot of challenging folks in the studio. Um, who do you think it was the most challenging, and how did you keep your composure? During that time.
Well, it's hard to say. I probably would think it was Donnie Purnell,
Yeah.
because at the time, as you say, Dee Snider was fine.
Yeah.
And he was appeared to be content,
Mhm.
appeared to be happy with what was going on, sat there while we mixed, approved all the mixes, and then went on the warpath.
Right.
So it wasn't really, he wasn't a problem in the studio.
Sure.
I don't think, I'll tell you, during Rockstar,
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
when I made the music for that movie, we had Jason Bonham, John
Oh yeah.
Bonham's son,
Yeah. Yeah.
and Zach Wild,
Mm-hmm.
who was Ozzy's guitar player,
Right.
in the band with Jeff Pilson, who I
Right. They were
whom
the
I
they were
hired.
the Steel Dragon
Yes,
band.
and I
Yeah. Yeah.
hired him. I hired Jeff to keep the peace.
Mm-hmm.
Jason was tough because he was a wild man. He wasn't an enemy. we didn't have a problem, and I didn't have a problem with Zach, but they had a problem with one another,
Mm,
and that was really tough. I think I mentioned that in the book.
yeah, yeah.
That little, it was really difficult to kind of direct them.
Now, how did that? I mean, how did Zach not, you know, pick him up and throw him? I mean, I
He
think
did.
that
He
was
did.
around, but
He,
oh, that's right, he did. But at the time, I think they were both drinking. Now they're not drinking anymore.
heavy, heavy. I mean, Zach would. He was productive. He
Hmm.
could work, and he would go through possibly 2 6 packs a day.
Yeah,
He had one particular kind of beer that he liked, and he would just keep drinking,
right.
just keep go. Didn't affect his playing.
So he's like the functioning type. Yeah.
Yes, he was a functional alcoholic. I wouldn't call him an alcoholic,
Right,
but
right. Functioning drinker.
yeah, functioning drinker.
Yeah.
And Jason at one point said, when I guess I made a remark on his behavior or his drinking, he said, "Listen, I have a reputation to uphold
Oh, yeah,
because of his father."
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
And so that was tough. Or Don Purnell.
yeah.
It's not productive at all musically to be working with someone one on one who doesn't like you.
Hmm.
It doesn't,
Was
doesn't
the
work.
thing with Donnie though, I mean, I would almost think that that would stir up all sorts of anxiety going, geez, we're doing good work here and this guy could implode the whole thing.
No, you both want, to make a hit.
Okay.
So it's not like
So he's
he
not going
like
to do that.
he's not gonna, sabotage
Right.
the
Sabotage. Yeah.
project. Everybody wants a hit. So you do the best you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have always tried to do the right thing in life and
Hmm.
everything. Do the right thing. It's safe. You never get in trouble if you do the right thing.
Right.
Uh, Most of the time I did. And
Kind of like if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember it.
and
Right?
the deal is in the music business, which doesn't have the most integrity of all industries. If you do the right thing all the time, people can take advantage of you.
Hmm.
So, and I have these little quips that I came up with during my career. One of them was, "Yeah, Werman, he's a really good guy. Let's screw him.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
we can take advantage of that guy. He doesn't have an agenda, you know."
Right. Oh,
So anyway,
well, there you go. Um,
I can't complain.
I just had one more thing, and it's actually just wrapping up. I know the book is Turn It Up. 2023 was when it was released. It's
No,
available on Amazon because that's where I picked it up, and they
thank you.
also have the audio book on there that you could
Cheaper,
stream. Yeah,
cheaper.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
Uh, you know,
And what's the website there, Tom? Because you do have a website.
I do I?
I think so.
I
Yeah.
guess I do.
I think it's
It's
tomwerman.com.
probably an advertisement for the book. Somebody did that for me right before the book was published, I think. I've I think I went on it once. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's tomwerman.com. So there you go. So pretty simple. Nobody wants that name, Tom. They just took it. You just up and took it. But last thing, Tom, because you've been
Yeah,
great. It's been awesome chatting with you. And just out of the
thanks.
blue, I reached out and you're like, yeah, sure, I'll talk to you. I don't know who you
Of
are, but
course.
I'll talk to you, which was great and gracious of you. But in closing, because this is going to be for We Go to 11, do you have a
Yeah.
good Spinal Tap-esque story? I know at the beginning of this whole thing, you were saying how way back when you went to go see the Spinal Tap movie, everybody was laughing, and you're just sitting there going, this is a very
These
funny.
poor guys.
Yeah.
These poor guys.
Yeah.
Well, we quote that movie a lot in this house and have since we
Oh,
saw it.
good.
And I was asked to have a meeting with the band at Universal MCA uh, to possibly produce Break Like the Wind. I think that was it. And McKeon was there, Harry was there, Chris was there. Uh, I think that was it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, bass,
Yeah.
drums, guitar.
Yep. Yeah, because their drummers
Yeah,
explode spontaneously combust.
yeah. So anyway, that was a that was a real thrill for me. They didn't choose me. Um, Lukather was there. There were three or four other guys who could produce a record for them.
Mhm.
Uh, but there wasn't a film, right? There wasn't a film.
No, no, no film for that one. Yeah, it was
And
just
the
the
same
record.
thing happened with the Blues Brothers.
Oh,
Uh, Belushi and I spent some time together. I had a meeting with Dan
mhm.
Aykroyd, and I passed. Uh, there was no movie then either.
Right.
Uh, and I also was uncomfortable with the concept of assembling musicians for a record. I
Mhm.
I had never, well, that's not true. Three or four times out of 52 albums, I hired somebody, a ringer, a hired gun, to come in and play. Lukather was one of them.
Mm.
Um, Jay Graydon was another. Uh, he was on I Want You to Want Me, the studio version.
Mm.
So I didn't know a lot of studio guys, and I felt very comfortable working with self-contained bands. So so that was that. Spinal Tap-esque.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I don't know. That would have been an oblivious heavy metal band that was clearly over, and I don't think I had any of those that were clearly over
Right.
and still kind of blissfully ignorant about what was going ahead. You know, what a great quotable that and Animal House.
Oh yeah.
Some of these from that era that just eminently quotable.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't have any stories that would parallel
Right.
Spinal Tap. There's another one coming.
Yeah, there is. And
Yeah.
they hate each other. It's almost like Motley Crue.
Yeah,
Oh,
really.
yeah. I
Uh,
don't know. I you didn't say that. I said that. Want to clarify that. So,
well,
oh,
it's unfortunate that bands, that happens to bands, a lot of
sure,
bands.
sure.
Yeah.
And that's
Uh,
true. That's true. I say that because back in it might have been 1997. I had a band that was supporting Motley on that Carnival of Sins tour, and
yeah,
we went through the back, and they had like four black tour buses, and they all had a bike attached to the back, like they were hauling a little motorcycle, Harley or
not
something.
not
Yeah.
little.
No,
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 those
no,
were
not little,
little
but
motorcycles.
little trailer, big bike, right?
Uh,
And so as we're walking back there, I go, "What's the deal with the black?" And they're like, "Oh, those are the Motley buses. Each one of them drives in a separate bus." And I was like, "Oh, shit!" And the same with ZZ Top. They were all in different buses.
really?
Yeah. So
I
yeah.
did not know
So
about that.
I guess it was fairly common. And again, those were two of my favorite bands growing up. It was Motley and ZZ Top. So there you go.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
I was on a
well,
I was on a tour bus once
yeah. Yeah.
overnight.
Oh, no,
Not good.
not
Not good.
good.
It was
Yeah.
with Poison. It was with
Oh,
Poison.
okay.
There was nothing outrageous. I just didn't
Right.
sleep well.
Yeah. 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 Well, thank you so much.
Hey, it's been fun. We could do it again.
Yeah,
You
we
know,
can. In fact, I'll keep
fun.
in touch if you're okay with that. Um,
If
but
your viewers
are
are
clamoring
interested
for part
enough,
two. Yeah, maybe we will get part two somewhere along the way there. Thank you so
that's
much,
good.
Tom.
That all right?